Good evening all and welcome to the Council meeting. I am Councillor Preeti Head, the Mayor. In June 2017, 72 of our residents tragically lost their lives in the fire at Grenfell Tower. I ask every member of the Council to pay our deepest and continuing respects in the conventional manner by marking the moment with 72 seconds silence now. Would everyone please stand? The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Are they agreed? Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary or any other significant interest in any item being considered at tonight's meeting? I shall now ask the Chief Executive to report apologies for absences or lateness for this meeting.
Thank you. I've received apologies from Councillors Adurian, Benton, Graham, Idris, Jeddat, Macover, Marshall, Thaxter, Verboven and Whedon-Zans. I've also received apologies for lateness from Councillors Ahmed and Hargreaves.
Item 5 is public speaking. I will now invite those who have registered in advance to speak to address Council, in turn for no more than 5 minutes each. A member of the leadership team and member of the principal minority party will then be able to respond for up to 2 minutes each. We have 8 people who have requested to speak, therefore I invite everyone to be as brief as possible. I will ask any speakers who reach their 5 minutes to bring their address promptly to a close to ensure that all speakers have a fair and equal opportunity to be heard and to receive responses from councillors. I would now like to invite Bilal Gamari to ask a question.
Testing? Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak in front of you. My name is Bilal Gamari. I live on Lancaster West Estate, and I'd like to bring to your attention 2 matters. Matter 1 is for the Highway team and Councillor Kem Kamali. I'm here today representing local residents and parents of St Thomas Jones Primary School. I want to address the ongoing health and safety matters for those who live off of St Mark's Road and the parents whose children go to and attend St Thomas Jones Primary School. Last year, a street consultation report was conducted on St Mark's Road and I want to highlight in the report it mentions that RBKC found that there wasn't much engagement from local residents to pursue anything other than a temporary road closure, which relies solely on volunteers to enforce. Now, the reason I speak here today is because I strongly feel that the reason there wasn't much engagement in the consultation report is because the community feel like, what's the point in getting involved when there ain't going to be much action? And so I definitely feel like if there was another consultation, that the parents and volunteers would feel like the council are listening to us, because obviously there is the temporary road closure right now. The council meeting back in May this year, Fabian Fenzel asked you, Sem Kamali, why AMPR should be implemented, and Kem, your reply was, this measure will not stop cars coming through, which is correct. It does not have the same effect of the physical barrier the volunteers make and manage. However, with AMPR, we can manage the timing of the closure, the type of vehicle, and can penalise those abusive motorists who at times force their way through the barrier and threaten us volunteers. I sent Clem an email 3 weeks ago detailing the important matters and the ways the road can be implemented. The email included photos, videos, and can easily be safely downloaded, detailing and proving fights, driver standoffs, hit and runs do happen on St. Mark's Road, however, I'm yet to receive an acknowledging reply. I'd like to stress the need of the council conducting a feasibility study on St. Mark's Road to understand ways in which some permanent measures can be implemented, such as installing 6 or 7 foot restriction barriers to stop HGV vehicles routing via the very narrow St. Mark's Road, which is a major health and safety hazard, not only for the children using the road, but also the quality of those lives who live in the surrounding area next to the school, having to live with the sound of chains of skips smashing along the lorry when it flies over the speed restriction bumps outside the school does absolutely nothing to slow cars down, besides having more of an impact of a catapult for the vehicles. This surely impacts the education for the children and the quality of life for those who live in the vicinity, not to mention the construction material which is left on the floor at times and health implications on the CO2 emissions when over time ends up on our windowsill and in our lungs. We're asking to at least restrict what type of vehicle can route on, or the direction in which they can travel via St. Mark's Road be looked at. This can be done with either AMPR and or restriction barriers, which the system will eventually pay for itself and will become means of income for the council with the amount of PCNs which will be handed to the motorists. The second matter I would like to bring to everyone's attention today is to Sof McVie, who I believe recently took over from Kim Taylor-Swift as head of housing, specifically regarding Lancaster West service charges to leaseholders. Before I start, for context, Chelsea Creek, a new 1,200 luxury housing development in Chelsea Harbour, the local authority is Hammersmith and Fulham, a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 900 square feet apartment is on the market for £1.37 million. The facilities there include a 24-hour concierge, access to lounge and cinema room, residents-only swimming pool, spa and fitness centre, roof terrace, conference room, lift, and partial heating and hot water systems. It all sounds very nice. The annual service charge there for 5 weighted rooms will cost someone £6,734, or £561 a month. We have none of these services on Lancaster West Estate. I probably see the cleaner once a month and landscapers 3 times a year. The only time I know they're there is because they leave the vegetation on the floor. So there are around 900 flats in Lancaster West, so not far off Chelsea Creek. My service charge for this year is over £6,550. It's only £153 less than the mentioned luxury apartment. It's an increase of 55% from last year. How can one luxury complex, which offers all of the above, to their residents, and RBKC offer what we get at Lancaster West, which is a poor service? We're basically being charged a first-class ticket somewhere and being seated in economy. Us leaseholders have come together to price in these to question these increases, and have written to RBKC collectively, individually asking for clarification, but have yet come to any conclusion. Is this a knock-on effect or combination from the Grenfell issues, years of neglect resulting in high energy and inefficiency on the estate, incompetent management? We ask RBKC Housing Management to look into these urgent matters and work with all leaseholders on the estate. Thank you.
Councillor Kamali, would you like to provide a response, please?
Thank you, Bilal. There's obviously sort of 2 questions there. I'm not sure the procedure here, but I suspect I'll be able to answer, and you'll get a response from Sof after the meeting. First and foremost, obviously, the whole purpose of a school street is about the safety of children. going to school. I saw the videos you sent. I think it was about 5 gigabytes that I downloaded onto my hard drive. I went through all of it. Some really shocking scenes of sort of aggressive driving and sort of a lot of foul language outside of school, which is absolutely not welcome. You've also correctly identified some of the possible ways to solve these things. I think in my previous emails and in speaking to Fabian, I've highlighted that cameras don't stop cars hitting children. We don't want to give a false sense of security to children crossing the road, that they think they're in a school street, but then a car will go through a camera. They will be fined, but they may injure a child on the way. But we haven't done nothing since Fabian spoke. We are looking at our camera contract. We currently only have 6 in the whole borough. We are looking at whether we can procure more. It's slightly complicated, but in procuring more, we would also have to have the manpower to go through all of the footage to make sure that somebody driving through was a legitimate resident or whether or not they were actually simply a visitor on their way somewhere else. There's a lot of back office function that would have to be set up. What I am happy to do, though, is sort of look again at the school street and whether or not there are smaller tweaks we can do on the ground more quickly. It is obviously a very long road, and people haven't yet got accustomed to it being fully closed. I think that's something we could do, and probably actually look at the way the consultation was handled and whether we need to do a new, fresh consultation on either varying it or whether we can sort of codify what's already there. But we'll get back to you on the next steps. Thank you.
Councillor Laghi, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. And thank you, Mr. Gomari, for coming to speak to us today about this safety issue. And thank you again for coming to discuss this in our councillor surgery in Nottingdale, which is highlighting the whole. So that's took me to go around, not just St. Mark's Street, but also around the all the other schools in the ward. And I've seen shocking issues regarding the way we are managing our streets in particular. Of course, we cannot stop vehicles because they are going to go through. On my way now to here, to work, from work, I've just took a picture. I stood there just for 5 minutes around the junction of the coming from Cornwall Crescent, going into St. Mark's Road, and it's shocking. I took a picture, which I can share with the lead member again, which is just this evening, and huge recovery vehicle turning in, and the signage as well. Okay, now it's not regarding timing with the school. It's obstructing the vehicle. If we could look at the vehicle coming from Cornwall Crescent, turning into St. Mark's Road, no way that driver will be noticed that there is a restriction during the hours time where parents are picking up their children. So I will ask our officers and the lead member to look again at the whatever impact study they've done, which I 100% agree with you, instead of wasting more money to conduct a proper feasibility study and impact over a period of time, maybe rush hours on the schooling time, that's what I meant, is to give it a serious consideration. So I will welcome the lead member to come for a walk with me to identify some hotspot in my ward as well as yours. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McVeigh, would you like to respond?
Oh, Bilal, sorry, I wasn't due to respond because I wasn't sure what the questions were about. So just very quickly, I'll get back to you about the service charge because I do agree that it sounds an awful lot. So I will definitely get back to you about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bilal. I would now like to invite Kedisan Gallardo to ask the question. Apologies if I didn't get your name. the pronunciation right.
Hi everyone, good evening. As you know, I'm known as Keddy. I am here today to speak about all the issues for those who are permanent disabled in North Kensington. I live in Bramley Road, Goodrich Court, in a surround of the Grenfell Tower. But I am here today to speak not just about my individual issues with my rehousing, but I need to let everybody know, because I was here in 2018. I've raised all the issues and I did not see any different. I did not receive any action. In 2020, I was here for the same issues. I have not seen any change to what I raise. So tonight, I'm here again to talk about my experience. I'm still waiting for disabled access 3-bedroom. That hasn't happened, 10 years waiting. And also living in L&Q Housing Association is nightmare. And I'd like to know what the councils are going to do about it, because everybody is aware of it in the town hall, including the environmental health. But everybody seems to be just ignore our issues. This is serious health and safety in my building is neglect. You got disabled, vulnerable people live on the ground floor, and also some of us are parents with young children. So the councils are fully aware of Kim Taylor-Smith, and also the environmental health officers. It's Elizabeth Ewing from the environmental health who served L&Q last July, which 4 months, nothing is done since then. And also my individual case, a gentleman called Mr. Rene, and I haven't had anything. Every time I send an email, nothing comes out. So therefore, today, also, the housing medical is health and disability. This is me. It's the person who know about their needs. Then I'm thinking, what about the other people who's got the needs like me, that hasn't spoke out in town hall, didn't have no chance to come out even from their house? We all are neglect. Tonight, I would like to see that Kensington and Chelsea will take this into account and do something. Okay? The medical teams, they have to listen to me. I make the decisions, they can assist me. They can follow my medicals, everything is in the town hall, I provide them what they ask. But when it comes to decisions, they make their decision. So upper floor, it's not disabled access if someone can't evacuate themselves emergency. It doesn't mean because it's got lift, it's disabled access. The flat might be, but if it's somewhere on high floor that I need to use lift, without using lift, I can't get access, that's not disabled access. We need to make sure these medical teams understand, because it's very important. If it's emergency, in the event of fire, I won't be able to get in. If the lift that breaks down or has got water leak, all the lift's going to be out of order. I could be out, or in my house, I'll be stuck. And we need to see that. All I want is ground floor, 3-bedroom. Don't worry about making, painting and decorating, as long as that I can actually fit in that room and it meets my family's and my needs. And please do something, because we can't wait another 10 years again going around and round circle. So please do something about it. So, and secondly, I'd like to mention is the Grenfell recovery doesn't reach to all Grenfell affected. So I don't know, because you all know where we live. We all taxpayers, council taxpayers. Kensington and Chelsea Council knows who these people are, who our children are. They know what schools they go to. And these children are neglect. Because if we treat in some children, those children should be treated equally. And we need to see that legacy of to what we had to go through on the 14th of June 2017. Right now, my building has no lights. My entrance is from the car park. It's open to any public. We haven't got no lights. They managed to put in my front door.
Ms.
but that's
Gallardo,
only
could
for
you
my-
please bring it to a close as quickly as you can?
Okay.
It's been more than 5 minutes.
So
Thank you.
therefore, I would like to know, the council had 2 years ago 12 or 13 wheelchair users in the waiting list. That's 2 years ago. And I'd like to know how many wheelchair users are still on the waiting list for 3-bedroom. And secondly, the policy. What is the Kensington and Chelsea's policy for people with disability, someone who's in a wheelchair? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor McVeigh, please.
Thank you, Kelly, for coming in to speak, though I'm really sorry to hear about the issues you've faced in an L&Q home, and we will definitely be taking that up. We have a registered provider forum, which actually Councillor Hammond set up, so thank you for that. So we're going to bring up those issues with them there. But sadly, you're right about the suitable accommodation. Accessible accommodation is in incredibly short supply in this borough. Ground floor accommodation. I mean, I don't want to discuss your individual case here in this forum, and I have arranged for specific officers to meet you earlier today, but I completely understand why you wanted to come in tonight. And Dan Hawthorne, our Executive Director of Housing, if you want to wait around just afterwards, he can come out and chat to you. I mean, I understand you're right at the top of every list, but just literally nothing is available. So that's one of the reasons on our new homes programme we are trying to address this and build accessible homes. Sadly, we have several families with specialist needs in temporary accommodation, and they're in hotels, and fully cognizant of what you say about lifts. So we are aware of this issue, and I'm sorry you are still coming back to speak to us about this, but it is a big priority for us, so thank you for coming in.
If someone apply, I need ground floor and a ground floor which is accessible property throughout the property, then you got all your medical for a reason why. Why do the Kensington and Chelsea Council medical team change that? That is your needs. You provide them.
Ms. Gallardo, could I possibly rudely interrupt?
Just quick, please.
If you speak to the officer, Dan Hawthorne...
But I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of, not
course.
just individual.
No, I understand.
So, okay, all I want you to do is if someone's in a wheelchair like me, who cannot walk, I'm not just talking individual
Thank you.
myself, but not to rehouse them. Any property that has got lift.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you.
lift is involved, it's not accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just wait.
Okay.
Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Kirdy, for coming today to raise this really important and far too long-standing issue. As we've mentioned, it's not the forum to discuss an individual cases, but as you know, I'm aware about the ongoing and unacceptable issues around this, and I'll be very happy to meet again with you to update and progress on any individual case and how, as ward councillor, I can assist. I understand that health and safety, repairs and maintenance and decent homes are matters which affect all residents. However, the adequacy and safety of housing for disabled residents in particular is an issue which needs to be specifically looked at. The council will not have forgotten how many disabled residents lost their lives high up in Grenfell Tower. I know the council has been aware of this for some time, and I would expect, therefore, in the council's new homes programme, to see significant provision of safe and suitable homes for disabled residents. I would expect to see the same requirement in provision reflected in planning decisions on all new homes developments in the borough, and I would also expect to see the council taking action regarding its existing homes and homes of registered providers to ensure that all residents have safe and suitable homes. This should be part of an ongoing conversation with councillors, officers and disabled residents to ensure that finally we make some progress on this.
Thank you, Ms. Gallardo. I would now like to invite Gregor Kastalic to ask a question. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here today. I wanted to actually raise an issue and ask the Council to consider installing speed bumps on the section of Elgin Crescent between Ladbroke Grove and Kensington Park Road. This is a section which supports 3 bus lines, 2 of which are 24/7. They are very frequent, and unfortunately, and this has been an issue that has been going on for a number of years, they do exceed substantially, on many occasions, the speed limit of 20 miles per hour. Now, it is, this stretch of the road is almost 100% residential, used by children, elderly, and so forth. So I think we've all experienced many near misses by the various buses and speeding vehicles on this stretch of the road. I personally, and I think other people from this, who live on this road, have raised the issue with TfL. I have raised it personally on 4 or 5, if not more, occasions, as well as the Metropolitan Police. TfL have been responsive, but ultimately said that they can only kind of ask the drivers to, or the companies who drive the buses to install the speed limits on the buses. That hasn't really happened. Most recently, the Metropolitan Police responded to a letter. They came, spoke to the policemen who were on the site. They went to speak to the bus companies. Interestingly, for a week, we had a good week where people were not speeding. But it all, after that, it all went back to normal. So I thought maybe if I address you, something can be done. And it really, from my point of view, I think the only way to limit this is to install something permanent for drivers to have, they will need to reduce the speed. And I've been focusing on buses because they're the heaviest. You can feel them in the house. You can feel vibrations throughout the house. And so particularly in the morning and evenings, they're speeding up. But other heavy vehicles that use this stretch of the road will do the same. Cars, obviously. So that was what I wanted to raise, and hopefully, at least it can be looked into, so that we reduce the risk, and we don't talk about it, in a few months' time when someone has been severely injured. Thank you.
Councillor Kamali, please.
Gregor, thank you for coming in. I'm afraid your tale of dealing with TfL is one we've all experienced. Lots of meetings, lots of conversations, and very little ever appears to get. So we will pick this up. We'll meet with TfL at a more senior level, especially with officers in the room, and see if we can get some actual numbers as to whether or not they have installed them, what they're doing, or which routes do or do not have them, and whether or not we can get them on these lines as well. So no definite answer tonight, but we'll be in touch and stay in contact. Thanks.
Councillor Bakhtiar, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an important issue, and thank you for bringing it this evening. I was representing St. Helens until the last election. And with the residents, we've managed to install speed bumps on Latimer Road, which is much safer for everyone. We've seen cars driving 50, 60, even 70 miles on Latimer Road, but not anymore. Councillor Kamali mentioned that it's a TfL problem. They wouldn't allow us to install speed bumps. I think the only way to make people feel safer, our residents feel safer, is policing, which is impossible to do, to impose the 20-mile speed limit, which is already there. So the best option is speed bumps. So with the lead member and with the council officers, we need to work together to convince the TfL to install speed bumps in there. And the other point you've raised is very true about bus drivers. I have never seen a bus driver driving slower than 25 miles. Well, we need his comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Stuart Cox to ask a question. You have 5 minutes, please.
Chief, thank you kindly. When does my 5 minutes start? As soon as you start. Thank you. I've been in a war of attrition with the council for approximately 17 years. After 1,600 emails, 300 hard copy, 11 court cases attempting to find remedy and restitution. So just to clarify, my question tonight is, which RBK staff incited other public officials to commit criminalities by obstructing and perverting the course of justice in public office and to prepare paperwork built on false premise in order to protect unlawfully acquired considerations of pecuniary deception by extortion for unratified and unjust enrichment, contrary to law and equity, depriving the defendant of over 17 years of his life and valuable considerations under the Larceny Act 1916, defending counterfeit and unratified court claims and suffering a heart attack, having invested £40,000 into the property, due to the stress of defending false claims that are again being threatened. What and by when are you going to do something about it? So what I want to do is not only remind you that I am a collective employer of yourselves as trustees of the estate in trust. Never were you granted the authority to administer the people. I am also a beneficiary of that said trust, and it's questionable if it is the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, the of meaning it's corporation, when in fact it should be Kensington and Chelsea Royal Borough. Therefore, what I'd like to do is to read an email that I sent 2 days ago by a threatening party to evict me if I didn't pay for services that I do not have. Since my abode, and I moved in 2001, I've been flooded 28 times without remedy or restitution. Not to mention 11 other court cases I've had to fight. So this is the email I sent 2 days ago to Patrick Makanuja of the Housing Department. I've just found your email below as mentioned in our phone call of the 6th of October 2023. I am happy to pay anything that is outstanding, subject to ratification of all your claims, as this is also the first I have heard that the rent has increased and that service charges have been bastardized to appear as the truth when they are not. no doubt fabricated to mislead others for advantage. I resent, refute and rebut your defamatory accusations and allegations that I refuse to pay and refer you to the above. As you know that no court process can occur until the administrative process is complete and an end letter issued. Yourselves are in default to provide this full discovery to date. Please provide all paperwork statements of when these amounts you're claiming commenced and the full ledger of accounts relating to myself. Please also provide a complete breakdown out of all the service charges I'm actually liable for, as it appears beyond reasonable doubt that the figures have been fraudulently manipulated. The evidence suggests that you are unlawfully and illegally attempting to claim monies from me for the period of the 31st of October 2020 and before, when the RBC ended their contract of electricity supply due to a lack of continuance with the cyclo system. We were threatened by RBKC employees in writing that if we didn't agree to have new meters fitted, we would be cut off. Our electricity supply would be cut off. This occurred on the above date, 31st of October 2020. Take note. I did not want your supply as we were being overcharged, and I would supply and pay for my own heating on my domestic account as I have done, as agreed with the RBKC and in the RBKC log file, for my hot water since 2014, so as not to waste energy. I don't want to burn energy 24 hours a day, so I use the emergency heater. As it was not cost effective from the council or community to burn electricity 24/7. Whilst
Cox,
I could turn on the emergency
Mr.
heating
Cox,
when required.
may I please request...
May I
bring it
request
close?
extra time just to complete this email?
Yes, please, as quickly as possible, please. Thank you.
As it was not cost effective from the council or community to burn electricity 24/7, whilst I turn on the emergency heating when required, thereby saving energy and the expense for all. This, of course, brings into the question of competence of who is running the energy supply. I have had no electricity from your third-party supply from the 31st of October 2020, when you cut me off, leaving me an old-age pensioner, to shiver through 3 times 6 months winters of October the 20th to May the 21st, to from October the 21st to May the 22nd, and May 22nd to October 23, which I have paid for.
Mr. Cox, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but do you have much longer to go? Because
Sorry?
how much longer do you have? Because we can't...
A few minutes.
Could you...
A few minutes.
Well, I'm afraid you've had more than 5 minutes. I'm so sorry.
Well,
I
I'd like to complete this because there is 227 flats being extorted because it was on a central heating system from the boiler, and they didn't want to put a new pipe in because of 500,000.
Why doesn't Councillor McQuaid respond to you now?
Sorry?
Councillor McQuaid will respond to you now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam, I need to complete.
Well, I kind of am understanding the broader aspect of it. And it's, to be honest, I'm afraid it's a little bit complicated for me right here, right now, to get right down to the nitty-gritty. And I don't quite think it's quite the right format to do an individual case in a council chamber like this. But I understand what you're saying about due process. And, yeah, exactly, 17 years and 11 court cases. I listened to what you said. And I'm really sorry to hear about this. And I think I need to take this away, and I will definitely get back to you personally, and I will get to the bottom of this and to find out what's happening with the service charge. And I was in Trellick yesterday, so I'm sorry I didn't come to see you then. I didn't know you were speaking today, but I'd be very happy to come and meet you next time I'm there.
I am the official general executive.
Okay, great. It's okay. Brilliant. Thank you.
If you'd like to copy the email.
Perfect. I'll get that from Robert. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yep, brilliant.
Councillor Lowry, would you like to respond, please?
Mr. Cox, I'm firstly very sorry to hear about your health issues you raised, for which I hope you received appropriate treatment. With regards to queried service charges, I do understand that queried service charges will be raised at a future meeting. With regards to the extensive allegations of criminality, I suggest yourself and your solicitor potentially take this up with the police, which would be the appropriate avenue as opposed to a full council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. I'm now reading a request from Sheila Lewis. Housing policy has to change for disabled, vulnerable people living. With this, Repair in Houses Association does not want to take responsibility, but I think RBKC will have to take the responsibility for the lack of care because it's the duty of care. Or housing association license should be stripped of them and the authorities should take the property back. Councillor McQuay, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you. I don't want to labour the point about this. We covered some of the aspects with our registered providers when I was replying to a previous question, and we really do need to work very closely with them. And there's absolutely no excuse for poor quality housing, and we will be bringing this up with them. Definitely. So thank you very much to Mrs. Lewis for raising this.
Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Sheila, for your question. I do agree that there needs to be a review of the Council's housing policy for disabled people, and in particular how it's operating in practice. With regard to Goodrich Court in particular, and where there are rogue housing providers, where council enforcement is not leading to satisfactory improvements, alternative solutions must be found to ensure that disabled residents can have safe and adequate homes. It really shouldn't be too much to ask, and so I will be looking into this with officers myself. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Sheila Lewis. I would now like to invite David O'Connell to ask a question. Mr. Connell, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lady Mayor, councillors. I'm David O'Connell. I'm a resident of Lancaster West Estate, and I was here because as part of the reparations after the fire, one of the things that was promised on our estate was a refurbishment of the estate. And today I was over at Henry Dickens Estate, which is a nearby estate, and I was watching they've had a refurbishment which started last year, and their estate is currently full of people building, putting in new windows. There's new doors on most of it, and there's been new glass put through. And on our estate, which was promised a refurb 6 years ago, there's very little happening at the moment. I know and understand that they're about to start works, but they've been about to start works for 6 years. And one of the things I was here to ask is I feel that with our refurbishment of our estate, there has been a loss of what the focus should be. The people at the centre of the refurbishment should be the residents. The focus of the refurbishment should be to try and improve the lives of the residents. And it seems to have, in all of the grants and maybe the money that has been given to the estate, the focus has shifted to a focus on green values, which are all great things, but they don't necessarily improve the lives of the residents immediately. One of the things on our estate is it's single glazed. Our service charges are the highest in the borough. There was recently a reduction in the service charge to make allowances for our temporary boiler, which is a result of the fire, but still we have our single glazed windows where all our money, if you're a leaseholder and a tenant, is pouring out through those windows. And one of the things I feel has not happened is there's been no prioritisation of the things that will make people's lives better quickly. There is a very commendable effort to build beautiful new insides of flats. I know there has been a 50% apparently refurb of internal properties, but I would ask, please, can you move to actually fixing the piping, and can you fix the windows in the estate, because those beautiful interiors are already being ruined in many cases by leaks that happen all over, because we've got 40, 50-year-old piping there. I would ask that as part of your new job role, Sof, that you could come and meet us and we would actually talk about reprioritising and looking at how to make things better, because this is costing tenants and leaseholders thousands and thousands of pounds, and it is not so far led to anything that is causing much happiness amongst people. And one of the things we talked about are quick wins that could have possibly happened on the estate. My front door system doesn't work. It hasn't worked for 6 years since the fire. Yet there's been much talk of a new door system, but it's always just about to happen. In the estate, we talked 4 years ago about having a lighting system that dimmed when you walked around, so it would save money, because our estate is full of thousands of lights that are on brightly day, night, 24 hours. After that, finally bringing that up and the service charges, they put one light in next to my flat, which dims and brights up. I hope that is something that will be put across the whole of the estate, but it's interesting where they chose to put it first. There are also, on our estate, no one can find where it is. They can't find any of the blocks because there's no signage. That's another thing that's been there for 4 years. We'd love to know when any of this is going to happen. I'd love to think that there could be a reprioritisation of what is happening. Because at the moment, the only refurbishment that's really started properly is in Treadgold. And Treadgold at the moment is a building site with 14 people still living there. I know the council say, oh, but only 5 of them still don't have anywhere to move to, but they can't do any of that refurbishment without those people moving out. Why was there no plan? 6 years surely is long enough to have thought through these things. So I feel that there needs to be either a thought about the management of how this is done, because if they can manage to do a large amount of refurbishment in a year in Henry Dickens and put new windows in, why has that not happened at all on our estate? Thank you.
Councillor McVeigh, please.
Thank you, David, for coming in. I found myself nodding with you. I, as you know, live very close to Lancaster West, and I look at the windows all the time, and it always crosses my mind that is absolutely essential. We should be doing that. And I'd also just like to thank you, first of all, for being absolutely steadfast in holding the council to account. I remember seeing you in the audience in my very first Grenfell Scrutiny Committee. Thank you for keeping on going. And you did say we have done half the properties, so we have started. There have been, obviously, we couldn't start straight away after the fire. We had to consult with everybody, and I know it was a real co-design that was done. And then I'm afraid there was an issue with one of the people, the contractors that I believe we contracted with, and so we are where we are now. The good news is that we are on site, and as you said, we have done half. We've piloted quite a few flats, I think almost 30 flats with triple glazing, but I understand that's incredibly frustrating when there's still ones with single glazing. So I have completely said that we need to focus on the double glazing and new bathrooms and new kitchens. Your point about Henry Dickens is right. We have done that. That's pretty much part of the kind of the cyclical program. And I was visiting it there the other day, and I went to Swimbrook, where again we're doing a cyclical program there. So we are really focused on making sure that our homes can be as energy efficient as possible. We can't control the price of the gas, but we can definitely control, you know, the heat escaping. So I'm in the process of visiting all of our estates in the borough and looking at where we can change all the glazing to double in particular. So I would definitely take up your offer of meeting with you and finding the priorities. I think what you said of written down the front door systems and the signage are essential, and I would have thought, as you said, those are quick wins that we should be able to do. Treadgold House, I'm probably running out of time, but Treadgold House comes under more of our green programme, and so that is a huge another part of it. But I think it's going to be fantastic when it's all done, and we'll have the whole Nottingdale heat network as part of it.
That's good for the people who are still living there.
Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you. And thank you, David, for coming and asking these questions. They're questions actually that I too would quite like to understand the answers to. Going forward, I think it would be really helpful to understand how the Council intends to address these matters, to improve things for residents and to mitigate the impacts so far upon residents, not least considering and bearing in mind the very sensitive nature and location of Lancaster West Estate and everything its residents have already been through. With regards to the high and unrealistic service charges, I know that residents have been raising this for some time, and you'll know you're not the only place where this is an issue. I know that with regard to Lancaster West, the Council have taken some steps in response, but I'm also aware that this does need to be looked at further. So I hope that the conversations that can be had with the lead member can also look into this further. And just before I finish, I'd also quickly like to thank the previous speaker, Bilal, for what was frankly a very shocking comparison of service charges in Lancaster West compared to Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Mr. O'Connor, may I make a request? For future reference, when you do send in your request, could we please ask you to just send it in good timing, so then the lead members have perfectly good time to respond properly to you, and it just makes life easier for all of us. We love hearing from you, don't get me wrong. So if you could, I would be so grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would now like to invite Kimia Zabian to ask a question. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. And so here I am again. 6 years I've been coming here when we hit brick walls, frankly. I'm the advocate for Grenfell next of kin, but I'm here tonight to speak in support of Lancaster West Estate, because what happens on that estate matters greatly to the next of kin, for whom that site is and will always be a very important place. And what I want to say is really that all of the councillors here, it may not seem as though what we're talking about should be of concern to some of you who are from different parts of the borough and maybe have other things that are your priorities in different departments. What we're telling you should matter to all of you, because quite frankly, you're on the precipice of having a demand for commissioners to be brought into this council. And I will explain to you why. When Grenfell Tower fire happened, as a result of the negligence of this council, amongst others, for which this council has apologised, and it became known as a national tragedy, at that point, for political reasons, an external team did not come in to manage what was essentially beyond the pay grade of this council and the ability of this council to manage. And so very quickly systems were put into place and lots of mistakes were made, and we ended up in a situation where the site of a national tragedy where 72 of your residents died was essentially farmed out to an independent management system that is not answerable to anyone, has no normal scrutiny from this council, is completely separate like a satrap in North Kensington, where they're allowed to do whatever they want with no oversight whatsoever, and where the residents of that estate, who are at the heart of that tragedy, because, as you know, this council received considerable sums of money from central government in order to be able to manage the challenge of Lancaster West Estate. We're now in a situation where residents down there say that what they have now is worse than the TMO, which is really something to be ashamed of, considering that the TMO was not held in very high esteem, as the decisions that the TMO made were also responsible for the tragedy. So the problem you have is one of management and structure. You cannot farm out Lancaster West Estate, which is the largest estate in this borough, to an unaccountable management system where allocations are made willy-nilly with no scrutiny, where as David said, the Henry Dickens estate refurbishment happened because it's the council that actually controlled and have organised that refurbishment. But with Lancaster West Estate, there's this special team, the W11 team. They're not answerable to anyone. And what you've done beyond that, which is really mind-blowing, is that you've then said that the local RA, which is just ordinary citizens without the skill set that is required from such a complex situation, are the go-to people to make massive decisions that have a huge impact on the lives of 2,000 residents that live on your largest estate in this borough. The shambles down there is beyond, you couldn't make it up, literally. You could not make it up. So all this money was given by central government for refurbishment of Lancaster West Estate, and there have been 40 windows put in. Bilal talks about the leaseholders on Lancaster West Estate having to pay greater sums of, or just under £150, I think it was, for their flat compared to a luxury apartment block in Chelsea. So it should concern all of you, all you councillors, unless you're willing to take this to the wall. And I'm telling you that's where it's headed. Because central government cannot sit by and allow this council to do what it's doing to those residents, particularly since the future of the tower is imminent, so that site is still a place of national importance, and it's not, and you're not managing it at all well. You're not managing it. You are failing on Lancaster West Estate 6 years on.
Councillor McVeigh, please.
Thank you, Kimia, for coming in and taking the time to raise this issue. As you know, I've only been in this role 1 month, so a lot to take on board. And it's timely hearing you tonight. I've been hearing from residents all across the borough. As I said before, I'm visiting every estate and finding out what we're getting right and also what we're not getting right. And I understand that your concerns about Lancaster West. So it's timely, as I said, to hear you tonight. I know you're not a resident, but you are representing residents. I would just like to say we really are committed to making Lancaster West the best possible place to live. I explained to David before that there have been delays to it. And yes, you're right, there are huge sums involved. It's a substantial investment, but we think it's completely right to invest in people's homes. And I will, though, be investigating some of the costs, because I'm very much of the view that we have to cut our cloth accordingly to our budget. And if costs have spiraled, then that's not acceptable. Though we all know the backdrop to the rising costs of just about everything at the moment, and that does include, obviously, building works. You mentioned about the representation issue, and I'm really more than happy to review how we do work with all the RAs across our estates. Not some of our private RAs, but the ones in our estates which come under me. And I would just like to say, actually, the work all RAs do is a huge amount of work, often incredibly unsung, incredibly difficult. And I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank all RAs in our borough for doing this, and as well as other engaged residents. And I know there are other engaged residents here tonight, and they contribute to meetings, events, and committees. And also there was a citizens panel here, right here, on Monday night, which Sarah led on. So we do try to listen and act on what we hear as much as possible. And I know that our local ward councillors in Nottingdale have been incredibly involved with Lancaster West, so thank you for this. But I'd also like to take up the aspect of representation more with Claire in her role as chair of the Housing and Scrutiny Committee, and find out how we can scrutinise that more, if that would be suitable, and see what we can do. I mean, I think definitely W11 is accountable to the housing management. It is accountable to me. As I said, I live very nearby. I think the guys that go around and do all the repairs and their W11 T-shirts do a fantastic job. And most of them are local residents. So,
Councillor McVeigh.
Thank you.
Sorry. Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimia, for bringing this difficult matter to full council and to encapsulating the issues so clearly. I just want to confirm and mention in my casework in Nottingdale, I don't know whether the leadership are aware of how many residents actually wish for the TMO to come back. It's true. I'm sorry, but it's true. I assure you it's not rubbish. I would not stand here and say rubbish. If you don't want to hear it, if the deputy leader doesn't want to hear it or doesn't want to see the reality, then that's his lookout. This is actually a matter of really widespread and growing concern for many residents of Lancaster West Estate. And as Ward Councillor for Nottingdale, it's a matter that's really concerning to me also. The officers are aware that I want to see these concerns looked at and addressed. In terms of progressing that, there is some scope for this under budget scrutiny with Overview and Scrutiny Committee and with the Housing and Community Scrutiny Committee. And it will be really important as part of that work to draw particular attention to the aspects that relate to Lancaster West and the refurbishment as per your question. As chair of the Housing and Communities Select Committee, I will also specifically bring this issue to my committee with a view to seeking the clarity and transparency that will address the concerns that residents have. It may be that there are matters for the Audit and Transparency Committee, and I'll also be speaking with the chair of that committee about this to try to get the transparency that residents need to allay the concerns that you've raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sabian. I will now read out another request from Ifeona Onia. Can the Council provide clarification regarding the level of assessment and mitigation measures that will be implemented to address the potential health risks, including air pollution and contamination during the 10-year construction phase of the Project Flourish development? Additionally, can you explain the rationale behind approving a hybrid planning application and what steps will be taken to ensure residents are adequately informed about its implications, given the numerous concerns raised by the community? Councillor Kamali, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, they're not here tonight, so this is just for the record. Firstly, we haven't approved an application. That will be for the committee as and when it's worked its way through the system. But it is fantastic to hear that there is interest in developing over 2,500 homes in Kensington and Chelsea. These are homes that will make sure are safe, fit for good human habitation, and actually fantastic places for people to call home as part of our safer and fairer commitments. Regarding the land contamination point, I in fact met with the director this morning to talk about contamination and planning applications. There are myriad statutory duties that the council has to undertake in bringing forth such an application. A scheme of this size is one that which will go through huge levels of scrutiny by council officers. I expect over a year of work will go into before this application makes it to a committee. Why is it coming as a hybrid? This is really very much at the choice of the developer. They are choosing to sort of bring forth the bit that they're keen to develop quickly in detail now, but given the uncertainty of the housing construction market and the future changes that may arise over a lengthy build program, they don't want to just yet commit to exactly what the buildings will look like or what shape they may take for buildings which may not be built for sort of 5 to 10 years down the line. So that's why it's come as a hybrid, but the land contamination point, we do have a huge number of conditions that would be attached to such an application if and when it comes to committee.
Councillor, back to you, please. Okay. Councillor Lowry, go ahead.
I do hope that Councillor Kamali will reassess his opinion on this project. We don't have an application, but we have seen the outline of what they want to do. Quite frankly, The disdain and contempt for resident health and well-being shown by many proponents of this development is quite despicable. And Councillor Kamali has not addressed the issue actually raising the question. About 15 years ago, it was estimated that £30 million was the cost of remediating per 1 metre of soil. These projects take 10 to 20 years to complete. We have seen absolutely no assurance or detail from the developers on how this will take place. The fact that this proposal is now going to be a hybrid application, which residents were only informed of just a couple of weeks ago, is a slap in the face. That's not what was consulted upon, and quite frankly, if that went through, it would mean a prolonged remediation process, exposing residents to the effects of more toxins, which is exactly what happened in Ealing Southall, with a similar development on tainted land. So I'm very concerned by the leadership team's response to this. Ballymore are a rapacious developer, one of the last to sign Michael Gove's commitment to remediate unsafe buildings, so you know what angle they're coming from. From the housing component, fewer than 20% of homes will be affordable, so that fewer than 500 homes in total across the whole project would be social. We therefore note that when the council leadership state that development is necessary for RBKC to provide for the over 3,000 households on our waiting list, it is in fact making only available 360 homes. So the allegation that this development is going to provide widespread housing need is completely false. Also, only 15% of the housing proposed will be 3- and 4-bedroom homes, which is exactly the housing that we need. So the actual units being developed are not as per the borough's needs. And in conclusion, Madam Mayor, I would please ask Councillor Kamali to adhere to the council plan and listen to residents who said that we need an inclusive community which enriches the local area, promotes healthy living, healthy streets, physical and mental well-being, because this development, and we haven't seen the application, but as the outline presented, said that, as the outline presented, it doesn't fulfill that. Please support your residents.
Thank you, Ms. Onya. Do members have any petitions to present? So, moving on to item 7, statement by the leader and response by the leader of the minority party. I now invite the leader of the council to address the meeting for up to 5 minutes. Councillor Campbell, please.
Madam Mayor, I think there's only one place to start this evening, and that's the violence and escalating crisis on the Israeli-Palestinian border. The attack on civilians launched by Hamas over the weekend has to be condemned by all in the strongest possible terms, and I am sure everyone on the benches agree. And I'd like Councillor Ali to reflect on this point in his own remarks tonight, and I hope that the Labour Party here in Kensington, Chelsea, are going to follow the lead of their national party and join us in condemning the attack on Israel. On Monday, I wrote to leaders in synagogues in our borough and to the Israeli embassy to offer our unwavering support and our deepest sympathies, first and foremost. Our own communities here in KNC are our main priority. The Hamas attack was an act of barbaric terrorism and should be viewed as such across the international community. I echo our own Secretary of State, James Cleverly, when he says any response should be proportionate and civilians on all sides should be protected from harm. We all want to minimise the loss of human life. That has to be the priority for all sides. I'm also writing to leaders of different faiths. We will work with organisations of all beliefs to promote community cohesion and build relationships. Madam Mayor, the protests on Kensington High Street on Monday evening were a reminder of the depth of feeling that exists. More demonstrations are expected in the coming days. I know many residents were unhappy with what they saw. We did deploy teams to clean up graffiti and do repairs pretty much immediately. The process itself and the numbers involved reflect the fact there is a wider conflict in history, decades long, and now there is the growing complexity of what is happening right across the Middle East, with strong views on all sides.
Madam Mayor, the events of this week are a stark reminder how global geopolitics impact us locally. We saw that in the protest and also in the lives of our own citizens and our own workforce here at the Council. As I stand here tonight, we have already had reports of people stuck in Gaza or in Israel, impacted directly by the fighting. We know people who have lost loved ones and people who are searching for the missing. We have people who may well be asked to join the army as conscription takes hold, and we have communities across London with opposing views living in close proximity to each other. At the last council meeting, I spoke in detail about one of our main council plan themes, safer. It feels more than important than ever. Londoners have the right to feel safe and secure in this city, and we welcome the Met's decision to deploy more resources. I met with the Borough Commander on Monday, and we will help them in any way we can. Madam Mayor, it would also be remiss of me not to reflect on the earthquakes in Afghanistan, a huge loss of life and something that would usually dominate headlines and our thinking, had it happened at any other time. I've asked officers to reach out to the Afghan families we're already supporting since the mass evacuations of August 2021. It's again imperative that we help in any way we can. Madam Mayor, I did want to talk about the second theme in our council plan this evening, which is greener. It's still important for me to do so. It's another one of these global subjects that has local impacts. I will, however, keep this brief and in context with the magnitude of what we're witnessing elsewhere. I wanted to highlight the reshuffle we've had within the leadership team and the renewed focus it puts on getting to net zero as a council and as a borough. A renewed focus across the whole leadership team. Johnny and Jem in particular working together, but working together with real pragmatism and working hard to take people with us. We want to make net zero a reality, not just an ambition. This morning I met Lord Callaghan, the Energy Minister, and explained how we've pledged millions to retrofit schools and public buildings, how we're greening our fleet at every opportunity, how we're creating a groundbreaking heat and electricity network in North Kensington. That is us doing our part, using all the levers we have, working with businesses. We will accelerate work, enabling greener choices for residents and businesses. Their own choices, their own investment, their own decisions, but collectively helping us all to get to net zero. Madam Mayor, finally, not as a leader of a council, but as a mother and a grandmother, to all the people impacted by the ongoing crises in the world, my thoughts are with you. I hope those with family and friends caught up in war and natural disasters receive positive news in the coming days. We cannot leave hope, even if sometimes hope all that we've got left. Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Kasim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I hope you all had a wonderful summer break. I understand the situation where we are now and the wars that are happening and the disasters. We all share the suffering of human lives and the people, the innocent people that have been killed. Now, as we speak, in Gaza, in Israel, and what happened, and no one, I understand the effects of war, no one knows more than I do, because I wouldn't have been here. I wasn't born here. And I'm here because of the civil war and the war that happened. And whether it's terrorism, in the Somalia, the country that I was born, one day, 1,700 people lost their lives in a suicide bomber. So definitely, no one in the right mind will accept terrorism. And I'm sure that all of us will feel the same situation. And I pray for the people who've lost their lives. And as my leader said in the Labour Party, which I've just come from, the solution for Palestine and Israel definitely requires a long-term solution, and the two-state solution will be the way forward. Then I hope the peace and stability of the whole region will be something we look forward to. And if I have the chance one day, I will visit, and I hope to see the communities that both the Jewish and the Muslims live in peace side by side. And I pray for that one. On that note, Madam Mayor, I would like to also refer what Councillor Simmons have just mentioned, which is not part of my speech, but just to add, when the Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Kim Telly-Smith, said rubbish in terms of the comments that she legitimately raised of the residents in Lancaster State and others have legitimately raised, I think it's important to remember when the leadership does not want to listen and only want to listen their own voices. The sitting council have mentioned it, the residents mentioned it. I think it's about time the leadership not to listen to each other, but to listen to the wider community in Kensington and Chelsea. That does not mean people who elected you only. It means people who did not elect you, and that is the responsibility, the leadership responsibility that I look forward to see the current administration. And hopefully when the time comes, residents will have their say. Madam Mayor, if I begin with thanking also the community, Kensington and Chelsea communities, we came together in a time of difficulties. We've shown when the disaster struck, the earthquake in Morocco and the floods in Libya. I would like to thank the Labour Council especially for donating a notable size amount of money to the relief program, and also Councillor Sina Lari and Councillor Noor, who attended the meeting with me alongside the Kensington MP, as well as the Labour Party candidate for Kensington, Joe Powell, who has raised a lot of money for the victims, who has already written to the members of our community to support. And I would like to, Madam Mayor, to remind this council where the effects that happen outside, but also have a connection in our borough. It's time for us to support all communities. Madam Mayor, if I may also start, just as I've mentioned before, I just come from the Labour Party conference, which was an exciting conference, a government that's in waiting. I had the pleasure of meeting hopefully the next Secretary for Housing Communities and the local government, the Right Honourable Angel Rayner MP. I'm pleased to inform the Council that her top priorities includes getting justice for Grenfell victims, and obviously looking to the whole process of how this council has dealt with Grenfell, and I have that assurance from the Labour Party leadership. Building social housing and making sure that the next Labour government will build 1.5 million homes for the residents throughout the country, and indeed Kensington and Chelsea residents are in need for social housing, social and affordable housing, not a luxury, empty properties that is just sitting for future profit. I will urge the council leadership to support the residents of the council homes, as well as housing association residents, as well as private renters. Our residents have the right to have a home is fit for human habitation. However, this has not been the case in St. Helens, where Councillor Portia Texter is dealing with an ongoing issue, and I'm sure the lead member for housing has been informed. The safety and security of our residents is indeed top of our priority, and I urge the lead member and the lead members, as well as the whole council leadership, to take the safety and security of our residents, because there has been stabbing and shooting in the borough, especially in Kensington, and that is a top priority. And we would like to work together on this to make sure that our residents feel safe and feel that they are safe in their homes and they're in the local areas. And finally, Madam Mayor, if I may just finish off with somewhat sad news, but in the same time, the reality what we're dealing with. As you may have read, you and other councillors may have read, the local BBC's local democracy reporter has written an article about a sitting Kensington and Chelsea councillor under administrative suspension from my party. Although I cannot comment on ongoing issues, but at the same time, I'm happy to report, I'm indeed here to report that this councillor has been retweeting or reposting, as we call it now in X, a far-right hate Islamophobic comments. The same councillor in question has also called Muslim councillors, including myself, that we are a national threat. In another word, terrorists. I'm sure we don't feel a terrorist or national threat while you're sitting Muslim councillors on both sides of this chamber. The same councillor furthermore called a word or a sentence to a black councillor, a sitting black councillor in this chamber, a word that I do not want to repeat at this council chamber, at this meeting. And finally, the same councillor made a comment on Twitter, as we now call it, on X, about the late Israeli Prime Minister, Golda Meir. I believe I pronounced her name correctly, and my apologies if I did not do that. That when the video has been shared, and the peace councillor posted on Twitter lately, said this is Zionism married with socialism. And I believe this councillor is in fact acting on not just something to do with anti-Semitism, Islamophobic hate and racism, And when my party makes the decision, I will inform the council, and I hope this council deals with all these issues. This is not acceptable. I'm a proud Muslim, and I'm proud to be a citizen of this country, and I'm proud to serve my communities for all religions, for those who don't have religion. And we should be dealing with this issue sincerely and deal with, as a council, as individuals, and as a community leaders, those who are elected. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I think it's just been asked a question. I will come back to the council and inform when the Labour Party, which is the party of integrity, a party that gets that party that has got all the communities working together, and I'm sure the party will make the decision. But when the party makes the decision, I hope and expect this council, conservative-led council, will agree with me that we are not accepting communities, individuals that are dividing our communities, and we are united on that front.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, item 8. In accordance with standing orders, I rule that the order of business shall as printed in the agenda. That's fine. Item 9, reports from the leadership team. I now invite Councillor Campbell to propose the reception of the report.
Sorry.
Sorry. On urgent lead member decisions, which is on pages 23 and 24 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Taylor-Smith to second. Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I was a bit keen. I'd like to propose.
I'm happy to second, Madam Mayor.
This item is only to vote as it refers to historical decisions, and the whips have not indicated that anyone wishes to speak. Therefore, is the report on pages 23 and 24 of the agenda pack noted? Thank you. The report is noted. Item 10. I now invite Councillor Hargreaves to propose the reception of the Audit and Transparency Committee report to adopt the amended Local Code of Corporate Governance, pages 25 to 48 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Yankson to second. Councillor Hargreaves to propose.
I propose, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Yankson to second.
Propose second, Madam Mayor.
I now invite Councillor Hargreaves to speak to the report.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much indeed, and it gives me pleasure to present this report to the Council this evening. And although the report itself is based on a lot of SIPFA and SOLAS recommendations and formatting that we have to abide by, it is nevertheless very much contextualised for our borough and support the work that we are doing here. It sits at the core of how we conduct ourselves and how we as councillors and officers behave in our everyday engagement with council business. It underpins the 3 council cross-cutting themes: greener, safer and fairer Kensington and Chelsea, and becoming the best council. It was approved by the Audit and Transparency Committee in June, and it comes to this council today. So I urge council members not only to adopt this amended local government code of corporate government, not only to adopt it, but also to live it in all the ways they are dealing with council and with residents in the work that they do as elected officials. Thank you very much.
Councillor Yankson.
And nothing to add, Madam Mayor.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does Councillor Hargreaves wish to sum up?
I don't think I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much indeed for the invitation, though.
I'm very good with my manners. Does the Council agree with the recommendation in paragraphs 2.1 and 2.5 on the agenda pack? The recommendation is approved. I now invite Councillor Campbell to propose the reception of the report to create a joint health overview and scrutiny committee, pages 49 to 54 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Thalasitis to second.
I'd like to propose, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Thalasitis.
I beg to second.
I now invite Councillor Campbell to speak to the report.
Okay. So this report is asking the Council to agree to the establishment of a joint health overview and scrutiny committee with Westminster City Council. So health services are required to consult local authorities' health overview and scrutiny committee about any proposals they have for a substantial development or any variation in the provision of health services in the area. If it affects more than one authority, then a joint committee should be established. And in this particular case, Central North West London Foundation Trust has proposed substantially to vary the development and provision of services at the Gordon Hospital and the St Charles Mental Health Unit, and we'll be discussing that later on, we'll be debating it. The formal consultation on the proposals will be managed by North West London Integrated Care Board. And to date, the cross-party Adult Social Care and Health Select Committee has carried out the scrutiny of the Gordon Hospital and temporary closure of the inpatient beds. Once this JOSC, J-H-O-S-C, has been established, the committee will no longer review or respond to the proposals. It'll be the JOSC which does that. So the recommendations, Madam Mayor, are clearly set out in section 2 of the report. And in summary, this council is being asked to agree the establishment of a joint committee with Westminster to review the proposals, to approve the terms of reference for the committee, which are set out in Appendix A, to delegate the power of referral to the Secretary of State to the committee, subject to all members of that committee being in agreement on any referral, and if they're not, the power will then revert to each individual council. And finally, to delegate to the monitoring officer authority to make any constitutional amendments should they be required. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does any other member wish to speak?
Yes, please.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will hopefully get to the motion on the Gordon later, so you will hear more about the background of the situation if you don't know it already. But just to give the Council an update on the formation of this committee, the new JOSC is being constituted by Westminster City Council and RBKC because they are the two boroughs expected to be affected by a substantial variation in the provision of acute and community mental health services by CNWL. The proposed reconfiguration of services only involves community mental health services in Westminster and RBKC and inpatient acute care at St Charles and the Gordon Hospital, where the wards have remained closed since the pandemic. This new JOS will give members the capacity to review in depth the reconfiguration proposals, drill down into the data and review this clinical evidence base, as well as hear from decision makers in the NHS. Health scrutiny is designed to help improve the health of local people, ensuring their needs and outcomes are considered as the integral part of the commissioning, delivery and development of health services. This especially applies to the reconfiguration of services. Thank you.
Councillor Wheel.
Thank you. I just wanted to rise to note and thank Lucy, Councillor Knight, for all the work that's gone into getting this JOSC put together. Because actually, to start with, they wanted to do it as a 9-borough JOSC, which, given that many of the boroughs are not affected by this at all, would really not have led to effective scrutiny. What Lucy and Westminster between them have managed to pull off is a much more effective body to scrutinise what is one of the most important changes in our local health provision for many years. And I trust that Lucy, together with Westminster, in what is a good example of cross-party working here so far to create this JOSC, I am confident it's the most effective forum to give this the scrutiny it deserves. So well done to Lucy and the scrutiny team.
Would anybody else like to speak? No. Councillor Campbell, would you like to sum up?
I think we've said it all. Thank you.
The recommendation is approved. Item 11, there are no matters for the Council to consider. Item 12, I have received notice of 7 questions to a lead members. We have only, sorry. Item 12, I've received notice of 7 questions to lead members. We have only 30 minutes, so may I advise everyone to be concise. I now invite Councillor Linda Wade to ask a question to Councillor Sof McVeigh. Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to ask the lead member for housing to provide an update on the number of RSL independent living units available for borough nomination for residents over 55 years of age.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. RSL, for everyone who's not sure, it's registered supported living. And we currently have 825 older person units managed by registered providers, of which we have nominations to. And I can understand why you're asking, because 153 of those are in Earl's Court. And just to reassure you that there are another 35 due to be delivered in the Odeon site on High Street, Kensington, by Loader, hopefully in the next year. And we are exploring options to do something in Lotts Road as well, because that's one of our priorities for the Chelsea area. So I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Wade, do you have another question?
In a borough with an ageing population, what steps are the borough taking to prevent loss of these units, given the prospective loss of Millicent Buller House and potentially others? We should not wait until these buildings are actually decanted before we have a discussion as to where these people are going and also how we're actually going to increase the amount of offer that we give. Thank you.
Councillor McVeigh.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to build as many as we can. So on our Earl's Court development site, up in North Kensington, and also down in Chelsea. So it is a big priority. So we completely agree with you. We need to focus on this. Thank you.
I think there needs to be further discussion because most of the stock provided in the borough is commercial and it's not for RSL.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. I now invite Councillor Lloyd North to ask a question to Councillor Jem Kamali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I ask the lead member for planning and public realm to update members and residents a year on from our motion to better deal with graffiti in the borough. In the past year, a lot has happened with the cost of living challenge faced by all, inflation, budget constraints and increased pressure on our cleaning services with the return of Carnival last year. Have we made good on our pledge to better deal with graffiti in Kensington and Chelsea? As we see other London councils struggling to deal with this problem, have we improved on the red tape and increased resources to better tackle this problem in our aim to be the best local council?
Councillor Kamali, please.
Councillor North, thank you. It's a good example of how asking questions can lead to action. I'm happy to say that in the first 6 months of this council year, we've already removed more graffiti than we have done in the previous 2 years combined. So rapid have been some of the removals that, in fact, people haven't had the chance to report the graffiti in the first place. And I know that makes Councillor Gardner's dog walks in the evening just that little bit less exciting. We have, in partnership with Johnny and Emma, in their previous roles, put forward budget to make sure that the graffiti removal team was enhanced, but can continue in this year ahead to make sure that we can keep those numbers coming. Of course, it's one of those issues that the better work you do, the fewer issues there are to solve. So I'm hopeful, in fact, that the amount of work we're doing over the next 6 months will diminish because there is that much less graffiti out on our streets. But as Councillor McVeigh highlighted just this afternoon to us, the anti-graffiti coating on Golborne Bridge has paid dividends and is looking fantastic. So money well spent, and I'm happy to continue to support this ambition. Thank you.
Councillor North, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, please. I just would like to say, would the lead member join me and my colleagues on this side of the council, because in their thanks to the officers and our teams, because as the lead member rightly points out, I think the turnaround time from report to removing of the graffiti in Camden Ward, which our residents very much appreciate, has been less than a week. So as long as we as councillors do our bit by helping the lead members and the teams and the officers, we can get more of this graffiti removed. So I would like to have a vote of thanks.
Councillor Kamali.
I echo Councillor North, and I too would like to thank the team behind this fantastic success. Thank you.
Councillor Hammond to ask a question to Councillor Addenbrooke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to ask the lead member for Communities and Community Safety if she will consider the introduction of a public spaces protection order to prohibit bird feeding on the public highway.
Councillor Addenbrooke.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond, for raising this evening. I've actually been in receipt of a number of emails from your residents about this, and I appreciate it's quite unpleasant in some areas. The Council is aware of residents' concerns about this, and I know that particularly in your ward, Stanley Ward and Chelsea Riverside, there is a real issue. So I think now is the time for us to take a fresh approach to this. So we will look into this, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.
Councillor Hammond, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome the lead member's reply. Is she aware of the specific problems that we have at Gloucester Road Station and South Kensington Station, where a huge amount of pigeon mess is caused, and it's basically encouraged by the large number of pigeons are encouraged by the pigeon feeders? And is she further aware of the second problem of pigeon feeders dropping seeds around residential streets at various hotspots, certainly in my wards, but also at other places in the borough? And does she accept that she'll have my enthusiastic support for her action to tackle this?
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. I'm aware of the problems in Gloucester Road and South Kensington. I think it's an environmental and health issue. I wasn't aware about the seeds going around the residential streets, but that's something we can look into. Thank you.
Councillor Dent-Code to ask a question to Councillor McVeigh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I read in Open Democracy, the website, that the American surveillance technology business, Fusus, if that's the right way to pronounce it, are carrying out a pilot scheme in Kensington Chelsea only, with a view to getting a contract for a real-time crime centre. So I want to know, please, is it true? And if so, where are they surveying? For how long and to what aim? And if they're using facial recognition technology, I've been told that the council is, so I don't know if that's true. Who made the decision to agree to the pilot and when? And what consultation has taken place with councillors or residents to allow a private company to conduct mass surveillance of what I think is probably council estates? Thank you.
Councillor McVeigh.
Thank you, Councillor Dent-Code. Yes, you're correct. It is on council estates. Currently, we have over 900 CCTV cameras on our estates, which they all record locally, and they cannot be accessed remotely. And I do have to speak in support of them, because just relatively recently, only a few weeks ago, a local operative was looking at these CCTV camera images of a resident going into a lift with a machete, and we called the police, and he was apprehended. So CCTV does have a very important role to play in the safety of all our tenants. Specifically, we are discussing with the lead member also for CCTV and community safety to actively monitor the CCTV centrally, which we don't do at the moment. But specifically to your request about Fusus, we are trialling it, the software, and it uses the internet to send pictures to a central place. But absolutely crucially, I can confirm that only appointed officers have access to these pictures. Fusus or any other external party cannot access them. And it's a trial for 60 days. And the technology is present at Trellick Tower, and that is where I mentioned the machete incident was. And also Markland Road and Silchester, only covering the lifts and the communal areas. And I can confirm that the residents were informed about all this. And we are only going to be looking at to implement this if all residents agree, so we will be consulting on this.
Councillor Danko, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I would, if you don't mind. Thank you. Certainly, CCTV is widely welcomed, I know, in crime hotspots, and this is viewed by the police. It's run by the police. This is a private company. I'm not quite sure how it works with a private company handing this over to the Met. In America, it was used to identify activists from Black Lives Matter, and in China to identify and track Uyghur Muslims. It has been banned in the EU. They're no longer using this kind of technology. The Met Police have said they're not going to use this particular company to provide CCTV, this advanced system, and China is actually reducing its use because of human rights organisations. A lot of organisations are challenging it. So it's CCTV is one thing. This is a step up, and I really think people need to understand exactly what it is and the implications of it, where it's being banned in some areas. Why is Kensington Chelsea only? This is the only council apparently trialling it. And why are we treating our social tenants like as if they're all suspects? I find it difficult. In crime hotspots, CCTV, absolutely. We've worked on that for a long, long time. That is under the surveillance of the police. This is different.
Councillor, would you like to respond?
Well, there were a lot of odd comments in there about accusing our residents when we're of being criminals when we're trying to keep them safe. So I will go back to officers and find out more about the specific software which our officers are using. So thank you.
Councillor Issy to ask a question to Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Lloyd has mentioned rightly, and graffiti is a problem in our borough. Graffiti is increasingly affecting the traders of Portobello Road Market, as well as residents at Portobello Road. What is the council doing about this for a long term, not just a short term tactical perspective, so as to stop this reoccurring and alleviate concerns from the traders and residents? I would like to thank Councillor Jim Kamali, who really has done a very good work removing for this. But this graffiti, it costs a lot of money to RBKC. It affects our economy for removing and reoccurring and removing and reoccurring, Madam Mayor. It's really a problem, you know, in this economic crisis. I'm calling on the lead member for employment, culture, and economy to ensure that the council takes steps to help local business and residents to stop the reoccurring of graffiti culture from our communities that affect our economy and environment as well. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor-Smith to respond.
Thank you, Councillor De Harbour. Yes, as I think amplified by Councillor Ali, it's very important we listen to our residents. But I think when I read your note, I did feel a little bit, rather like Councillor Simmons, that maybe we haven't talked to a representative people, and I apologise to the Chamber for my slightly emotional outbreak. It wasn't about listening. It was about the suggestion that somehow that this council was worse than the TMO. And based upon all evidence and on what this council's done, I'm sorry I did rather react emotionally to that, because I felt it was an insult to the whole work of the officers in this council. But anyway, thank you for raising that point to me. So I've had a good walk. I've only been in the job a couple of weeks. I've had a good walk up and down Portobello Road and Goulburn Road from 7 o'clock in the morning talking to retailers. And I have to say, I've actually had a very positive response, I think has been outlined by Councillor Kamali from people. The Market Street Action Group, Portobello Golden Management, Peter the chairman, I've met with him, Coldwell Forum, they all believe that there's a big improvement in the way that this council is dealing with graffiti. But you make a good point. What is the long-term things that we can do to try and stop this graffiti, rather than the short-term work? And as Councillor Kamali has said, we've managed to double the number of removals of graffiti at all, and in 2023. So, first of all, we've expanded the two-man team to 6. So we've got more boots on the ground, more people responding. And we have a dedicated team for both Portobello and for the Goulburn market. And this is obviously important because we can respond a lot quicker. We've, rather than just waiting for permission, we've actually taken a bold decision to go in and just paint it or clean it, which previously we used to think, oh, let's talk to the owner, etc. But we've done that and we haven't had problems with doing that approach. So we won't wait, we'll just get on with it. The second thing we've done is we've issued a CPN, a Community Protection Notice, to both TfL and Network Rail to say to them, you're responsible for the bridge, not us. Now, although we've gone ahead and painted it, but they need to step up and protect their assets as well. So it's their responsibility, they should be dealing with it. And the final thing we're doing, which we're trialling, is we're putting green walls. And we're seeing those on Portobello Road, because it's incredibly difficult to spray paint a green wall. Anyway, but thank you for your question.
Councillor, did you have a follow-up question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And is the lead member planning to look at the causes of the young people doing the graffiti? Is it possible to create employment opportunities or other interventions for those young people who may be unemployed or unhappy to express their anger to this graffiti that affected particularly Portobello Road and market traders? Is there any plans for employment?
Councillor Taylor-Smith.
No, I have no further comments to make, but thank you. And we can have a discussion on this after our council meeting. Thank you.
I now invite Councillor Abdullahi Noor to ask a question to Councillor Kamali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not allowed to ask the Mr. Kamali. The question is, we have done walk around on Goulburn Road back in February this year, which was to look at number of issues, mainly on bathing, which are dated back in 1998, 1999, if not before. And some of these bathing are causing risk to residents. I mean, one of the words on my note was not mine, was from a local resident, which I'm sure Kamali remembers. So my question is, I mean, what are the plans for this issue to be resolved? And can we have a timetable or time, the indication when this will be dealt with? Thank you.
Councillor Kamali.
Councillor, thank you. I do remember the walk around, and it was lovely to join you and Councillor Adam for a good tour of Goulburn. We've looked into it, and the piece of land that's in question is actually owned by the HRA rather than the transport team, so it sits more with Councillor McVeigh. But it has raised an interesting question about how we treat our both council estate but public highway, and whether or not we need to look at whether there's a little bit more cross-fertilisation we can have in making sure that both the land on the HRA estate is of a similar standard to that on the public realm. There is obviously huge implications with what that might mean, and a large piece of work that will have to go into assessing that. For that particular small issue itself, I do know that the team on the HRA side of it are looking at it, and will try and see whether or not they can bring forward those works. I think there is also the opportunity, we've just had the last round, but in the next round of ENSIL bidding, perhaps if you're able to work together with your colleagues to bring forward an application for it, that could help supplement the HRA's budget. But we are also doing a huge amount of highway improvement works in Goulburn on the public realm, with a number of pavements being replaced and improved over the next few months as well. But on that particular one, I think we need to work together with Councillor McVeigh. Thanks.
Councillor New, do you have a follow-up question? Thank you. I now invite Councillor Claire Simmons to ask a question of Councillor Randall.
Thank you. I would like to ask the lead member for Adult Social Care and Health about the Council's provision for residents who are suffering from hoarding in their homes. In 2014, the Care Act classified self-neglect, which includes hoarding, as a safeguarding issue, meaning that councils have a duty to protect the individual affected. As well as the impact on a person's life and well-being, hoarding also presents a fire risk to the individual and to their neighbours. Researchers agree that hoarding is a condition often caused or exacerbated by trauma, and as you know, many residents of North Kensington in particular have experienced a significant mass trauma in 2017. What is the Council doing to address this public health issue? Practical interventions to clear hoarded properties address the immediate fire risk only, but at the cost of further trauma and distress to the individual, and do not address the underlying problems. What, in particular, what therapeutic interventions have been developed by the Council for supporting affected individuals to address this issue?
Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Simmons. I think this is a really important issue that you've rightly raised. I think many of us have come across people who hoard and the public health issues it brings with that, and it's a really good question to raise here, especially for Council. So I'll address it in two parts, one, what the Council's doing and the therapeutic element of it as well. So the Safeguarding Adult Executive Board meets every so often looking at things such as hoarding, and it looks at things like therapeutic support for complex casework. So we've got particular officers that kind of do that. In addition to that, there's a subgroup of the board, which is called the Self-Neglect and Hoarding Board, which is chaired by Doug Goldring, who you may be aware of that particular board. But this brings together adult social care, it brings together environmental health, the London Fire Brigade, housing needs, and the mental health element as well for that. And so that's really important. And the group works together to look at thinking and how we can help those residents who perhaps need a self-neglect or in that. So in relation to hoarding. Now, in relation to therapeutic help, and this is a really good question. We have to address what we can do to help those particular residents who do that. So Adult Social Care Commission's an organisation called Clouds End. So Clouds End are a cleaning company. They have a very good rapport with the residents. We've had great reviews from them so far, and they have a particular therapeutic focus. We also have a dedicated officer who works on complex housing needs, especially including hoarding and self-neglect. And when a particular instance, for example, does not perhaps require Clouds End's help, or perhaps the board's element, we have a group of housing officers that will look at the hoarding in particular. So that, again, is made up of adult social care, other professionals linked to community safety, and we obviously help the resident try to resolve the issues the best way they can, of course, without any judgment or kind of pre-context. Because in addition to hoarding and other self-neglect being an issue around trauma, it can also be a sign of dementia or early onset Alzheimer's as well. So we need to really work with our communities to ensure they get the right service and the right care to address this issue, not just for themselves, but as you rightly say, Councillor Simmons, the wider issue on how that may affect their building and other tenants as well. We have training that our officers undertake as well for self-neglect, and that includes behaviours and how to manage complex cases, because I said we need to be really careful with these people and completely understand their needs. And of course, registered landlords as well. So I think that's a really important issue. It's not just indeed our tenants in social housing, there's those tenants who might be renting from private landlords as well. So we offer that service to the private landlords to say, it's not necessarily incumbent on just council buildings, but on everyone to ensure that our residents, whether they are privately rented or socially rented, to get the assistance that they need, again, through adult social care or through our housing needs team. Thank you.
Councillor Simmons, do you have a follow-up question?
No, just to say thank you very, very much for that very full and helpful answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, Madam Mayor, I'll get back to you in writing as well, Claire, on that. So that's.
Item 13, I have received 4 requests to speak under Standing Order 11, which is the maximum allowed. Could the following member please speak for up to 2 minutes each on a ward or other live issue of a general broad principle? Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The sale of St Mungo's freehold on Cromwell Road. Several suggestions have been made about its potential use. There's deep local concern and distress that the borough may consider acquiring the property for temporary housing. This is a property which is in poor repair. It's configured as single units. The borough does not have the expertise to directly manage temporary housing. The management has been left previously to, once the tenancy has been granted, it's the landlord that looks after the tenancy. If the borough did buy the property, would they consider using it as permanent stock, and then take the opportunity of reducing the special supported housing percentage in a ward with the highest level of specialist supported needs, and perhaps consider using it for the older people in this borough, because we have 61%, I think it's 21% of people over 65, and we have a growing rate over 84, and we do need to increase our social stock for them. Thank you.
Councillor Janet Evans.
Good evening. I have happy news. Many of you have seen this picture of Milo. Milo was dog-napped in Gloucester Road in front of Tesco. The poor parents of the chap who owned Milo called me, and they were desperate because, having lost his dog, he suffered from mental health issues and he was completely decapacitated. So we had to find him. And it was a community effort, and I have a lot of people to thank. But first of all, what we did, I wanted to explain to you so that you have a similar result. And what happened was we went to the manager of Tesco, and he said that he wasn't allowed to show us the CCTV. So there is privacy with CCTVs. And the police couldn't watch the CCTV at Tesco because it was an hour and a half long. That was the window that the poor chap had left the dog outside. So what we did, we spoke to the manager, and he very kindly agreed to watch the CCTV for August 8th, and he did it for an hour and a half, and he found the people, he saw the people who stole Milo. So that was a first. We were able to give that to the police, but we solved it ourselves. There are many agencies you can contact, but you have to stay very discreet. So we had pictures of Milo all over the area, and people knew about it. And he was all over certain groups on social media, which really helped. Now there is Pets Reunited, Lost and Found Dogs, Stolen Dogs.
Councillor Evans, this is a fantastic story. Time, please.
Can I sum it up, or should I leave them hanging?
No, please carry on.
He was found by, I have to tell you, that people on canal boats are watching the dogs. dog walkers have their own network, and they found the dog walkers in East London, believe it or not, but all because of these websites and because of Nalim at Tesco and the community helping. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Madam Mayor, can I just say the community helping led by their fantastic councillor.
Yeah. Councillor Sonia Zvedenyuk.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to draw attention to the efforts made by the Council as set out by the leader just earlier to support the Jewish community at this tragic time. I know that most people in the Jewish community in RBKC will know someone affected by these atrocities, and I hope that we can fly the Israeli flag above the town hall to show solidarity, as other government departments and local councils have done. It's impossible to come to terms with the barbaric terror we've seen over the last few days committed against Israeli civilians and UK nationals by Hamas, a proscribed terrorist organization. It is a sad fact that when Israel is attacked and when there is conflict at the Gaza border, there are people here in the UK who incite racial hatred, seek to increase fear in the Jewish community, and exacerbate community tensions through vandalism, physical or verbal abuse, and other means. Kensington and Chelsea must be a safe place for all communities affected by this conflict. That is why it's depressing that just around the corner from here on High Street, Kensington, the other night, we saw a mass rally that has already led the Met Police to have to investigate suspected criminal damage and seek to arrest those involved in criminal activity on our own High Street. Madam Mayor, we saw similar protests happen in 2021, where we had men in masks, smoke grenades, intimidating local residents, and men injuring local police. We cannot let this happen again in Kensington and Chelsea or anywhere in London. It is right that the Council provide reassurance to the public and to the Jewish community in RBKC that we will support the police in taking a zero-tolerance approach and be clear that those who glorify terrorism or celebrate or seek to justify the massacre of Jews have no place on our streets, and anyone espousing the ideology of a proscribed terrorist organization is breaking the law. We cannot have a repeat of the hate we saw in 2021 across London on our streets in the Royal Borough. And thank you to both the Leader of the Council and the Labour Leader for their words and sensitivity to this issue.
Councillor Mo Bakhtir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Henry Dickens Court renovations. The Housing Department signed a contract to install bathroom and kitchen extractor fans inside windows rather than a standard drilling a 3-inch hole at Henry Dickens Court renovation. Please don't say this is because it's unsafe. A huge amount of money is paid to erect scaffolding around the buildings, which is ideal for drilling holes for extractor fans. But the Housing Department had failed to understand that. Instead, they allowed the contractor to install DIY extractor fans. Please rectify this as soon as possible. Why are the painters still allowed to throw paint in hallways and stairways, making the estate caretakers who are paid by tenants and leaseholders for cleaning it? It seems that the problem that we identify and raise on the council meetings and committees and the speeches that we give during council meetings are for entertainment only, and that they don't go far enough for the officers to act upon. If this renovation continues the way it's going, then we need to spend more in the coming years to rectify the defects of the existing workmanship of the current contractors, just like North Kensington Leisure Centre. You need to install extractor fans in walls, not in windows. The contractors must be told to protect floors, hallways, and stairways while cleaning, while painting. This is a bare minimum of any renovation contract. Thank you.
Item 14, motions. Members will see that we have 4 motions printed in the agenda. Motion 1 is about customer service, direct debit payments. I call on Councillor Evans formally to move the motion standing in his name and Councillor Lane to second.
I beg to move.
Councillor Lane.
Beg to second, Madam Mayor.
I now invite Councillor Evans to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Well, now you're going to get 2 minutes. So, we are trying to modernize and to make people's lives easier. Toward that end, we would like to do online payment for car services, parking permits, of which there are 30,000. Just imagine what could happen if people can just do it online and renew online. So, even though we are supporting walking and cycling, we cannot leave behind folks that are immobile or elderly or just want to use their car for work or whatever. So I ask that the lead member for customer services, who is the lead member for customer services? Oh, you! I was thinking finance, I didn't realize the customer services as well. Well, I know we're in good hands with you. That you will please support this. Thank you.
Councillor Lane to speak to up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before speaking about parking, I just want to associate myself with the remarks from the Leader of the Council, the Leader of the Labour Group and Sonia in relation to the Middle East. Now on to matters we can solve in this Council. Parking is a service that affects a huge number of residents, whatever your car, whether it's the humble Chelsea tractor or that embodiment of masculinity that is the Renault Twizy. Whatever you drive, you can find a parking space in this borough, and that's because the RBKC permit is the gold standard in London. Well, not just London, but the world, allowing you to park anywhere in the borough, in any residence bay. It has a real-world impact on allowing families who perhaps live in different areas of the borough, north or south, east or west, to visit each other and be mobile, and that's why it's so great. It's a real leveller within our borough. But it does have its flaws. No policy is perfect, and one of the flaws is renewal. It has been difficult on occasion to renew your permit, and I have personal experience of this. When my permit expired without me realising it, I must have missed the letters, and then upon going to renew the permit, I realised I had to start square one, provide all sorts of things like insurance details and keeper forms and things hidden in the loft in, boxes, which took me a very long time. And time for our residents is worth a lot. We know that, and we know this is a core service that when they speak to us, they know we do better than any other council. So I really do welcome this digital revolution in parking services. Who says Conservatives aren't a fan of revolution when it's the right source? So viva la révolution. Or as another leader said, we're taking advantage of the white heat of technological revolution in parking specifically. Now, this is a policy, I've alluded to it before, but it helps everyone in the borough, north, south, east or west, wherever you're travelling to. And fundamentally, it's about recognising and respecting the value of both our residents' time, but also our officers' time. And it's also my hope that this policy will relieve officers of their valuable time, because they do a great job. I want them to know that. So in summing up, Madam Mayor, fantastic policy, about time it was implemented, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results. Thank you very much.
I will now open the motion up to debate. Councillor Claire Simmons.
Thank you. I also welcome this motion. It's a very good motion, but I'm curious about the title because you could be forgiven for thinking it was about customer service when actually it's specifically about one aspect, specifically about parking permits. A customer service mindset is laudable to the extent that it improves services, but I'm not sure what the word is for a customer who has no choice, no option to withhold their custom. But I don't think it's customer. It's a misnomer, it's insulting to residents, and perhaps it's a reflection of one of the ways this council's culture still needs to change. To acknowledge and improve the relationship between this council and those who use its services, perhaps we should more properly be talking about resident services, of which parking is but one. Why have we got a lead member for customer service when residents are not customers but captive users of council services? If we're interested in modernising, in changing for the better, in being the best council for residents, surely we should have a lead member for resident services, not this inaccurate and misleading term, customer services, which sends completely the wrong message. Subject to these caveats and suggestions, the motion itself looks very sound to me. In 2023, it seems more than reasonable for the council to provide the option of paying for parking by direct debit, while recognising different needs and while still supporting active travel. I support this motion about providing a direct debit option for parking permits, but I do urge the council to seriously consider renaming the lead member. Residents are not customers. Residents are not customers. Residents are not customers. The vast majority do not have the option to take their business elsewhere. The more accurate and more respectful term should be lead member for resident services. So let's modernise.
Councillor Thalasitis to respond. Sure, go ahead. Councillor Kamali.
Sorry, I was just going to add briefly.
Sorry.
This is wonderful. It's great to be working with Johnny on this one and delivering it. It is absolutely something for customer service to bring forward. It's something our residents really do use. I just do want, in looking into it, I've learned some things about sort of the users of our permit. And one of the big factors is that we actually have more people driving non-ULEZ compliant cars than we do driving electric cars in Kensington and Chelsea. And these are people which are now being hit every single day by Sadiq Khan's ULEZ tax, and it's hitting the people predominantly in North Kensington the most and in their pockets every single day as they go about their day. So what the council can do here tonight is relieve that pain just a little bit. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak? Okay, Councillor Thalasitis, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Evans and Councillor Lane for bringing this motion to the Chamber. I suppose I should address Councillor Simmons' request that I change my name first, and I may come back with a deed poll this time next month. But I can, fortunately, let her know that we have new resident service standards, aptly named, which were adopted very recently. I'm happy to go through them with you. The name is one thing. I think the substance is what really matters. And we have worked with residents on that. It's been co-designed. So we've got a very, very good focus on all of that, hopefully. I think there's been lots of progress in this area already. We've talked a bit about me and Jem working together today. We introduced paperless permits during the pandemic. So this is a service that together we've modernised over a couple of years now. I'm also mindful of what Janet said about the need for digital inclusion. in this service area. I think it's important that we reassure people, because there is a minority of people that can't access digital services, that there will always be an offer for them in the customer service centre. But we have to recognise that the way people interact with the council is changing. That's what those service standards start to do, and we need to modernise our processes in order to do that. I think I've covered most of the issues here. I mean, certainly we're going to work on direct debit payments, whether that's procuring a system or integrating it with some of the CRM work that's already happening, the customer relationship management tool, is, I think, something that we'll need to look into a bit further. So I think the detail of how we do it is still there for us. But doing it as fast and in as cost-effective way as possible to improve resident experience is certainly a priority. And I look forward to working with Jem and everyone on the leadership team and the council on this over the next few months. And hopefully, as Councillor Lane says, I'll even get a ride in the Twizy as we work on it.
I now invite Councillor Evans, mover of the motion, to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy that the lead member for transport and the lead member for customer services, Johnny, will be working on this. And I wanted to say that we discussed today at one of the digital inclusion meetings teaching people at the libraries how to take advantage of the new service so that they will be able to sign up and become digitally renewed on their parking permits. So thank you for taking this seriously.
I now put the motion to the vote. Would those for the motion please show? Okay. Thank you. Are there any abstentions? No. I declare the motion carried.
Motion 2 is about NHS provision for mental health needs. I would like to ask the Council to accept the altered text as printed in the agenda. Thank you. I call on Councillor Rendell formally to move the motion, standing in his name, and Councillor Adam to second.
I'll move, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Adam?
Ahmed.
I've got, okay, that's a mistake then in here. Councillor Ahmed. Sorry, but it's printed not your name. Pardon? Okay, thank you. I now invite Councillor Rendell to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and what a pleasure it is to have you in this seat for this particular debate. I think it perhaps is your first one, if I'm not mistaken. So congratulations on that. I'd like to thank, though, my colleagues on this side of the chamber and the other side of the chamber for this cross-party motion. This is an extremely important issue that is affecting our residents, not just in Kensington and Chelsea, but also in Westminster. Now, this motion, Mr. Deputy Mayor, had a similar version in Westminster City Council, of which Labour proposed and the Conservatives second. And I'm really pleased here that we're proposing this here, and my colleague, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, is seconding this. I think that's a really important cross-party consensus, because this issue, the issue of our residents, is extremely important. And I'm sure Councillor Ahmed will go into further detail from her experiences as well, but also other people across this chamber. So for those who may not know, the Gordon Hospital was a mental health hospital in Vincent Square in Westminster. It closed in 2020 without consultation. And that had a huge impact on mental health patients in Westminster. It had 51 beds, of which so far has not been replaced. Those patients in Westminster have had to come to here in Kensington, Chelsea, the St Charles Hospital in North Kensington in Dalgarno ward, with my colleague Councillor Ali over here. This has severely impacted our residents. So Westminster residents coming to Kensington, Chelsea for obvious reasons, but that has displaced our own residents for mental health needs. Now, mental health, as we know, is a huge issue, especially pre-COVID, but also especially post-COVID. And our residents are suffering from the effect of these particular NHS decisions. Residents now do not get our residents do not get the level of service they require. They're also waiting a very long time in A&E, especially the Chelsea and Westminster, where it's not particularly set up for mental health needs. But also, Mr. Deputy Mayor, some of our residents are travelling as far away as Milton Keynes to get mental health support. This is absolutely terrible. This is not acceptable. In fact, demand for mental health beds in Westminster has increased, with 777 people in Westminster needing mental health care compared to 103 the year before. All those people have to come to St Charles. Now that, again, is completely unacceptable. It's putting pressure on our own services, through all what the council provides, but it's also putting pressure on the communities, especially in North Kensington. Now, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as you know, I've only been in this role a month, and it's very, very exciting to be in. But we've got a huge political issue to tackle here, and I think everyone across this chamber will agree with this. I've been working very closely with my Westminster counterpart, Councillor Nafsika Butler-Thalasis, on this issue. And in September, we hosted a joint meeting at the Oratory in Brompton Road. Now, I know some colleagues were here. Councillor Ahmed was here. Councillor Thaxter, if she was here tonight, she was at the meeting as well. Councillor Wheel was there. Councillor Addenbrook as well. And colleagues from Westminster too, and also residents. What came out of that meeting, Mr. Mayor, is that the decisions of the CNWL, the Central North West London Trust, who provides mental health services in Westminster and Kingston, Chelsea, got universal condemnation. And I've got to say, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that CNWL, responsible for the decision, didn't turn up to the meeting. The whole point of the meeting, Mr. Mayor, that myself and Nafsika organised, along with those other councillors mentioned here, was to come to CNWL to come and be questioned by residents. It wasn't a council meeting, it wasn't my meeting, it was a meeting for the residents to question the decision makers. They did not come at all. I mean, I've got to really condemn that. That's a really horrible position to be in. And we had some very upset residents who lived on Vincent Square for obvious reasons. They had suffered the effect of the Gordon Hospital there, how that was managed in the past. We had residents we heard some residents especially, who had been patients in the mental health system and how well it worked for them. But now they're not necessarily getting that same service, again, because they doubled the pressure that's on St Charles Hospital. The challenge with the ICB, who will be the ultimate decision maker from the advice of the CNWL, they have told us they have to cut 40% of their budget this year. 40%. Now that affects not just this particular issue, obviously that affects things such as palliative care beds for Pembridge, as we remember that. It also affects children's services, and Councillor Folks and the leader and I were having a meeting about that today. But I've also raised this, Mr. Deputy Mayor, with our local Member of Parliament. I've had numerous meetings so far in the short time I've been in this role with CNWL. I will wrap up. I'm sure my colleagues will wrap up. But I'm just going to say that this motion is of prime importance. I'm really pleased it's got cross-party support, and I hope every member of this chamber will be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rendell. Councillor Ahmed, I'm sorry. Your name is correctly shown against the motion in the pack that is on my left, but in the script I'm supposed to follow, I'm afraid you're not correctly shown, as you've noticed, so apologies. Anyway, I invite you to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Councillor Rendell for giving such a really excellent overview. That was really thorough. And I also want to thank Councillor Addenbrooke as well in her previous role for the commitment she's shown to this, and also her role in leading on the community engagements that have happened. So, as we've heard, the message we've had from CNWL leadership is that mental health treatment is meant to be transforming, and it's going to be moving towards a system of care based in the community, which I'm sure many of you have heard before. But even before the closure of the Gordon, demand on acute mental health beds far outstripped the bed capacity that was available. So residents I've spoken to have described how loved ones were having to reach crisis point before they met the higher and higher threshold that was being set for admission, and how once a bed was finally identified and agreed on, they faced unacceptable delays from several hours to, in some cases, several days before a bed was found, all while having to watch their loved ones deteriorate further. And in some instances, this led to them becoming increasingly risky to themselves and to others around them before they could be admitted. So putting aside the immense pressure already that exists on community teams, for example, the single point of access that I visited with Councillor Knight, which is, it's not functioning effectively despite the heroic efforts of its staff, there is still a need for inpatient treatment, as evidenced by the dangerously high bed occupancy rates in CNWL Trust. For any hospital to function safely, the bed occupancy should run at about 85%. Or lower. Any higher than 85%, and you can expect regular bed delays, bed shortages, and kind of pressures elsewhere in the system that makes it more and more difficult to keep patients and staff safe. So it should be at 85%. But at CNWL, even before the loss of the Gordon Hospital, the bed occupancy was running at 98%. So, and patients were being placed out of area, as we've heard, in private hospitals that are overpriced, and to put it mildly, of a highly variable quality. And these hospitals are sort of out of area, miles and miles away from home, where highly distressed patients are having to be cut off from their support system at the moment that they need it most. For now, CNWL is saying that these out-of-area placements in private units have come down, but our residents are still being placed, according to them, in units as far away as Hillingdon and Hounslow, which is just not acceptable. And as we've heard already, residents in Kensington and Chelsea have borne the brunt of this, because those patients in Westminster Borough that would have been admitted to the Gordon, at least 60% of them have been diverted to St Charles Hospital. And the demand for these beds is only increasing. And so again, I do want to welcome this cross-party support on this matter, but missing from this discussion. I mean, we've heard it a little bit alluded to in the demand for 40% of budget cuts. What has been missing from this discussion is why we're here in this position of widespread closures of mental health facilities, such as the Gordon, and before that, the mental health wards at St Bernard's in Ealing Hospital. I began work as a junior doctor in psychiatry in 2010, which was the same year the government's austerity agenda saw the start of the longest reduction in healthcare spending in the NHS's history as a percentage of GDP. And as with so many of the vital services that are relied upon by the most vulnerable in our communities, the austerity agenda saw mental health care as an easy target. And the result has been funding cuts, which has made it a constant struggle to care for patients safely. Mental health trusts in England have suffered budget cuts of 8% year on year, which has meant that by 2017, a third of all child and adolescent mental health services had either been downsized or closed. And by 2020, mental health beds in England had fallen by 25%. It became the norm to start an on-call shift with bed managers saying there were just no beds, or no beds in London, or no beds south of Birmingham. And it didn't become, it became not uncommon to start a night shift in A&E, only to find the person that you'd assessed the night before as needing admission still waiting and becoming increasingly distressed. And it doesn't have to be this way. When speaking to directors of CNWL Trust, it's very clear that the cause for these bed closures is that they cannot afford them. Just as with St Mary's in Paddington, the hospital at the Gordon is not fit for purpose, and they've not been able to afford the refurbishments that are crucial to make the place safe for patients and staff. In scrutiny committee meetings, we were told unequivocally that the only way to afford to keep the 51 beds at the Gordon is if funding was withdrawn from community services, and that we cannot afford to have both. Well, the reality is we can't afford to lose either. They serve two very different patient populations, and we need both community services and the inpatient beds. And I just want to note as well that the inequality, the health inequalities that already exist, which mean that communities in Goulburn and Notting Dale in particular, who have some of the worst mental health...
Sorry to interrupt, would you note the clock? So would you like to wind up, please?
All right, I'm very sorry, but thank you for the cross-party support, and to Councillor Rendell.
Yeah, well done.
I now invite, sorry, this is all different here. I will now open the motion up to debate, and I call upon any councillors who wish to speak. And I'd like to note I have 3 names of councillors who have already indicated that they wish to speak. I have councillors Wade, Knight and Addenbrooke, so I call upon Councillor Wade to speak.
I welcome this debate on mental health and provision for those in need. But the CNWL desk-based strategy does not reflect the needs of patients in crisis and accessibility of places of safety that are available to borough residents. At an adult social care meeting I attended, I was alarmed by the disconnect between the provision, the need, and the offer. It's acknowledged that some residents might require a short stay in hospital, but many require longer-term planning of care and support, and that is getting lost. More emphasis should be placed on the discharge and ongoing support for individuals, and that's something that cannot be successfully achieved with shorter hospital stays outlined in the CNWL presentation. The potential loss of services and facilities, and that includes loss of acute beds at the Gordon, is short-sighted and is merely offloading the responsibility of care to others. I've been in the position where a resident required sectioning. I'd done it on a number of occasions. On each occasion, there's been a delay due to problems of locating a place of safety for the individual. On one occasion, the nearest offer was Milton Keynes, and on another, I was in a police car with an individual going around to try and find a vulnerable person a place, and that included the Gordon. St. Charles is routinely filled to capacity with the alternative use of Park Royal. The latter sometimes leads to uncoordinated care and support due to multiple moves and distresses the patients. With Grenville and the years of mental health support that will be required, and the increase in drug-related mental health issues, we need these beds. We need the community support. We need to ensure that all residents receive the right care in the timely manner with an effective support plan in place as the residents re-enter society. Failure to do so just creates a revolving door, relapse, problems for the individuals and neighbours. We support this very important motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, for the opportunity to speak. The Gordon Hostel was closed at the beginning of the pandemic on the basis it could not operate under COVID-19 restrictions. Yet 3.5 years on, and with restrictions long gone, the Gordon's 51 acute mental health beds still remain closed, and our community in Westminsters are paying the price of this decision. The cost of the closure of the Gordon's acute beds has been detrimental, putting our inpatient centre at St Charles under significant pressure as a result of it having to absorb the additional patient load of the Gordon. It is currently operating at an alarming 8 to 99% capacity on a daily basis, which is far from the recommended national operational capacity of 85%, which is considered manageable for these inpatient centres. Due to these capacity levels, when the mental health beds cannot be provided at St Charles, residents have to be placed outside the borough and often very far from home, meaning they do not have the support networks of family, friends, community and faith close by to help them through this distressing time. There have been copious amounts of research that have found that out-of-area care reduces the support for the patient when they're in hospital, can lead them to staying longer, compromises effective and timely discharge planning, and crucially reduces their chances of recovery, with the NHS even noting the benefits of close-to-home inpatient mental health care themselves in a report this August. When no inpatient bed can be located at all for a patient in crisis, which is not uncommon under the current pressures we face, patients are often left waiting up to 22 hours in A&E. For someone who is experiencing a mental health crisis, this can be excruciating and can worsen their mental health condition, often leading to devastating consequences, and not to mention the added pressure this situation puts on A&E patients and staff. In the 3.5 years since the Gordon has been closed, there has been a persistent message from the NHS that building is not a physical environment fit for purpose, due to the lack of ensuite bathrooms and outside space. It is true that residents there have to share bathrooms, but this is hardly an unheard of situation in the NHS, where patients often have to share bathrooms in many long-term hospital wards. So while we can all agree that this is not ideal, it is not a problem that cannot be resolved, and it most certainly does not render a hospital totally unusable, as beds are better than no beds at all. Again, with their argument in terms of the lack of outside space, there is little difference to the one the Gordon has always featured a spacious rooftop garden for its patients, which is little different to the one at St Charles I recently visited, which in comparison only one inpatient ward has access to, and the other wards there have to make do with small balconies that feature mesh walls and are far from inspiring. As we enter into this consultation, we've been told that there is no building locally in Westminster that could be turned into a mental health inpatient hospital. And the consultation options from the NHS are, we've been told that if we want acute beds to be reopened at the Gordon, this will come at the cost of the more community mental health services, as there is not enough funding for both of them. And another proposal is that instead of having acute mental health beds in the Gordon, they would move the Mental Health Crisis Assessment Centre there, also known as the MCAS, which is currently located in St Charles. So they would simply be relocating and removing the service from RBKC to reinstall it in the Gordon. Yes, it might mean a slightly bigger MCAS in the Gordon, but it would mean removing it from a community that needs it, and this is absolutely not representative at all of replacing 51 acute mental health beds that are so desperately needed to meet the needs of both of our communities. For those of you who are unaware of what the MCAS is, it is a new service that was opened by CNWL last winter to help address the winter pressures in A&E and provide therapeutic alternative to attending A&E for those experiencing a mental health crisis. And although it is aimed at reducing the mental health acute inpatient admissions and occupancy of acute wards, as well as out-of-area placements, it is by no means the answer to this problem. It can help alleviate the pressures we face, but we will always need acute inpatient beds. I cannot say I'm happy with the options being put to the consultation, and it should not be a case of losing one for the other for the beds to be reopened, as our residents deserve the best possible mental health support system, and it will never be a case of one size fits all. What I have found most difficult through all of this, and I know others have too, is the negative narrative that has been put forward to us throughout the whole on the option to refurbish and bring the Gordon up to standard where it can be reopened. Sadly, I do think this is a reflection of the lack of funding in the ICS available to support these services, but I hope going into this consultation, positive narratives are put forward for each route so the best possible decision can be made for both RBKC and Westminster's residents. Ultimately, what we have to make clear throughout this consultation is the importance of these inpatient beds, as if we lose them, I fear we will never get them back, and St Charles will continue to be overwhelmed, and our community will continue to lack the support that they deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Councillor Addenbrooke. Councillor Will, instead, or both?
Not instead, but I suspect I'm going to speak rather more briefly, as I'm far less knowledgeable. I really just wanted to say, my whole heart how I support this motion. Like some other people in this chamber, I've been very personally affected by these kind of mental health issues, and I am painfully aware of the lack of the acute mental resources and how families are forced to trudge through the country to try and find somebody to help their loved ones at the most terrible time in their lives. It's just there just aren't words to describe it. We cannot lose these facilities. It's as simple as that. We occasionally as politicians have an opportunity to really make a difference. I would suggest this is an issue that we have all obviously agreed on, and that we should be the squeaky wheel to make a difference on, and keep pushing and pushing to make sure that we have these resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Addenbrooke, do you wish to speak as well?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's clear that many of us in this chamber are extremely concerned about the further reductions in mental health support and services provided by CNWL for our residents following this temporary closure. And I say temporary, but I don't see this reopening. It's a closure. The fact that there are currently no acute beds in Westminster has put increased pressure on bed availability for our residents at St Charles. And the result of this closure has seen residents in both boroughs suffering with long delays in inappropriate settings, waiting for acute beds, with some placed out of borough, away from their family and friends. Earlier this year, I attended, together with officers, a number of workshops held by the NHS to feed into their consultation on the future model of care. And I have to say, there was virtually no recognition of the impact on our communities from the Grenfell tragedy. And there did not appear to be a proper assessment of need now and in the future. This is particularly concerning, bearing in mind the ongoing Grenfell inquiry and the future of the tower, and the significant impact this will have on our residents following any decision. As Councillor Rendell has mentioned, the North West London integrated care system has to make savings of 30 to 40% and is moving funding around the system to the detriment of our and Westminster's residents. In my previous role, we raised this issue at every meeting, but we remain concerned that we are not being listened to. And there is a question about what has happened to the extra government funding of £2.3 billion to NHS Trust to support the nation's mental health. CNW needs to tell us what they have done with their share of the funding. Mr. Deputy Mayor, we understand the consultation will not take into consideration the current needs of the residents of Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster, and certainly does not acknowledge or anticipate the need going forward. Whilst community mental health services are an important part of the service, the data shows us that there is a strong need for acute beds, and both services are needed to support those suffering with their mental health. Whilst we appreciate the Gordon facilities are not as up to date as St Charles, it is important that some acute beds are made available now in South Westminster to ensure that the right care is available at the right time, avoiding lengthy delays and keeping our residents in borough. Mr. Deputy Mayor, it's really important that we all work together to ensure we keep all our acute beds and community mental health services in Kensington and Chelsea, as it does seem that this decision has been predetermined. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addenbrooke. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I now invite Councillor Rendell as the lead member and mover of the motion to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you to all those who spoke. I think members here who weren't particularly aware of the issue are now certainly aware of the issue and how important this is for this. Again, I'd like to thank Councillor Ahmed and the Labour members for supporting this motion. Councillor, you absolutely sorry about my throat there. Your experience, especially as a junior doctor starting in 2010, I think it was, you said, and your day-to-day experiences of it. You hearing from residents about going from Hillingdon to Hounslow, absolutely right. We've got to consider that, as I mentioned in my speech, but residents are being moved on out over and beyond this borough. And the need for inpatient need, not just community need, but inpatient need as well, is really, really important there. Councillor Wade, really pleased that the Lib Dems are also supporting this particular motion. I think you're absolutely right in mentioning that this is offloading responsibility of care to others. I think that's a really good point. It's not just offloading care to other parts of the NHS, but also to the council here, which is not, we're not particularly designed for services especially as acute as this. Councillor Wade, your point around Grenfell as well was absolutely spot on. Obviously, the North Kensington community, the Grenfell community are going to go through some extremely tough challenges in the years ahead. And that's a particular point that we need to really support those mental health provisions, as well as other provisions in the north of the borough as it goes on. Councillor Knight, I think your scrutiny work over this has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I was just looking at the reports for it and what you and your committee have done, and really holding the NHS to account is really, really spectacular. And I just want to commend you and your committee for doing that, along with Councillor Wheel and the OSC. Because, you know, it's not just, it's all very well and good for me or Councillor Addenbrook or other members, you know, to stand up and have a go. But if we get complete consensus from the council, not just through lead members, but also through scrutiny committees as well, I think that's extremely important. And I completely agree with your point there that beds are better than no beds at all. And I think that's really important that we've got to understand and ascertain that. One point that you raised, which is also really important, Mr. Deputy Mayor, was that the consultation options that the CNWL have proposed all are detrimental to Kensington and Chelsea. So if they do want to reopen mental health provisions in South Westminster, at the Gordon or elsewhere, every single option is bad for RBKC. And that's what we've got to consider. It's not just saying, okay, we're going to provide more mental health acute beds. It's that they're going to withdraw community services from Kensington and Chelsea. That's one of their options. It's like, okay, we'll reopen the hospital, but we'll take away community provisions. We can't have that. MCAS, which, as Councillor Knight referred to, which is a system that was introduced last year, that's also going to withdraw for Kensington and Chelsea. Again, that's completely unacceptable. And we really, really need to ensure that this does not happen. Councillor Wild, absolutely, your point around your own experiences and people travelling across the country, I think that's really important. We can't have that for our residents. And finally, Councillor Addenbrook, who I must admit, Mr. Mayor, I cannot follow in her footsteps. She's been an absolutely amazing lead member. I think she, all the meetings I've attended, you know, universal love and affection for all that she's done for the residents, and her knowledge of the portfolio is something I particularly can never compare to. So I just want to thank, from my own heart, that thank you for all your service that you've done over the past few years. I think, Councillor Addenbrook, as well, your point around Grenfell and having to raise it at every meeting, in your experience, yes, but for me, in a month, Mr. Deputy Mayor, every meeting I've been to with the NHS, and there have been a lot, I've got to say, Grenfell is never mentioned until we raise it ourselves. We shouldn't have to be raising it proactively. This is a national, international crisis that needs to be corrected. And having us to say to the NHS, by the way, we still got a community that's traumatised, 72 deaths, a wider group of people in North Kensington and beyond that still need help. We shouldn't have to say that. They should be aware of that and how they should be addressing that issue too. Councillor Addenbrook is right. The NHS did receive £2.3 billion in funding, especially for mental health. Where has that gone? Especially for our community, and I think we really need to follow that up as well. So just summing up, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to put this to the vote and hope everyone supports it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Rendell. I now put the motion to the vote. With those for the motion, please show. Thank you. Those against, please show. Abstentions? I declare the motion carried.
given the time, shall we defer the motions for the future motions? Okay. Item 15, I invite Councillor Thalasitis to nominate the appointments listed in his name on page 51. Councillor, I now invite Councillor Lowry to nominate the appointment listed in his. Okay. Are there any other appointments? Is the appointment approved? There is no urgent business to bring to the Council's attention. That concludes the business of this evening's meeting of the Council. The next meeting of the Council is the full Council meeting scheduled to be held on 29th of November 2023. Good evening.